Among the proposals in the Democratic legislation, no chokeholds, body cameras for all police officers. But one flashpoint in the country and within the Democratic Party has been this idea of defunding the police. Joe Biden and top Democrats on the Hill are pushing back on calls from progressive activists to defund the police. The president and his allies now are using the movement to paint Democrats as soft on crime. But here is the presumptive nominee again explaining his opposition.
You support defunding the police?
No, I don't support defunding the police. I support conditioning federal aid to police based on whether or not they meet certain basic standards of decency and honorableness and in fact, are able to demonstrate they can protect the community and everybody in the community.
Multiple sources telling Politico that Majority Whip Jim Clyburn of South Carolina told Democrats on a private call to avoid being drawn into the debate over defunding the police. So, Eddie, this discussion, obviously progressive activists have been talking about defunding the police. It's become something of a semantic argument about what that means exactly. But when you look, for example, at the Minneapolis City Council vote, they said explicitly we want to dismantle the police department. So we're not talking about just rerouting funds to social programs, but in fact dismantling the police department. Is this a dangerous place for the Democratic Party to be when they have public opinion on their side right now, when they have all the energy in the streets to be talking about taking money away from the police entirely?
It can be politically, Willie, but it also reveals that we are just simply in the eye of the storm, that the divisions in the country are going to be made manifest as we continue to try to imagine a new America. Let's be clear. We have examples of disbanding police departments, one just recently in 2017 in Camden, New Jersey. And we have reports even in the New York Times about the way in which that move has impacted the notion of public safety, the experience of public safety in that city, that very troubled city in some ways. And what's troubling about Joe Biden's response and Jim Clyburn's response is that they're not dealing with the substance of the claim. They're just thinking about the politics and the optics, right? It seems to me that Biden needs to be very, very clear that what defunding is all about is kind of reinvestment, the justice reinvestment movement, redirecting funds, right? To think about policing in the context of tough on crime, police in the context of the war on drugs has led to an explosion in budgets, 54% of the budget in Los Angeles, 60% of the budget. You know, we can go on and on, right? But when we think about public safety in a different way, not within the context of the war on drugs or tough on crime or the criminalization of a particular set of communities, when we begin to think of public safety more broadly, we want to reinvest those monies in education and mental health, right, in social work, in a range of, in housing, in a range of policies that are not funded at the same level. And that seems to me something that Joe Biden should embrace. So he might want to distance himself from the slogan, but he shouldn't distance himself from the substance of the policy, it seems to me.
Eddie, it's interesting you bring up budgeting ending in 2019 over a 5-year span, $40 billion going to the NYPD. $6 billion and $7 billion, respectively, going to homelessness and housing development. So you think about that comparison within the New York Police Department and why so many folks are in the streets here asking for defunding or reallocating funds, at least here in New York. But you also have a lot of folks saying, look, defunding the police is not going to necessarily achieve what protesters want. Last night, Philip Antibagoff, a professor in policing equity at the John Jay College of Criminal Justice, spoke to Rachel Maddow about the idea behind plans to dismantle the police departments and explains why simply defunding them would not produce the results many protesters are calling for. Watch this.
Really what we're seeing now is people moving towards the sides of abolition. But it's actually about not having no police, right? But making sure, again, that communities have the resources so that you can have less of a footprint of police, right? So I'll give you an example. Lots of people have been asking me for the last couple of days, hey, if we defund the police, what happens when you call 911? And what I say back is, well, if something's on fire, what number do you call? Well, you call 911. And who shows up? It's the ambulance, right? Or sorry, it's the fire truck. And if somebody's having a heart attack, you call 911 and the EMT shows up. So we already have 911 giving lots of different emergency services. Imagine what would happen if when someone was overdosing, or when a couple was having a disagreement that they didn't know how to resolve, or when a kid wasn't feeling safe, right? If you could call mental health resources, child protective resources, substance abuse resources, if the resources that folks needed so they didn't need to rely on law enforcement were there, right? If 911 had more options, communities would feel safer, and you wouldn't be introducing a badge and a gun to situations that law enforcement could never be trained to manage in the first place, and that they've been calling to get out of the business of for years. That's what the majority of protesters and activists I talk to say that they want. They want more options for 911. They want more resources for communities, so communities make the decision about when something has gotten violent enough that a badge and a gun is appropriate. If you defund the police department and take away 50% of the personnel, right, which I'm hearing people say, like, just slash it 50% out. There is no union contract in the United States that says anything other than last in or also first out. That means if you're trying to cut it, you're actually getting rid of the youngest officers, who are also the most progressive, also the most interested in culture change. That's not the department that protesters are asking for, right? So if you don't end up following a roadmap and looking for ways to cut the right officers and cut the right programs, you're going to end up with tragedy in Black communities.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.